Everyone has at some point or another heard somewhere that Kingdom Hearts 2 was back in the day supposed to be the finale of the entire series, meaning that instead of 10 or so games that we have today, the entire series would have been reduced to literally 3 games. Those 3 being Kingdom Hearts 1, Kingdom Hearts Chain of Memories, and of course Kingdom Hearts 2. How would this affect the overall story, and more importantly, the different characters? Who would be completely different, and who would we never meet? Let's start with the most obvious one in my opinion, that being the Birth by Sleep trio, and basically none of them would ever exist, therefore we would never meet them, and we would also never meet Xion. For newcomers that are confused on the Xion matter, let me clear up that while 350 over 2 Days is a direct prequel to Kingdom Hearts 2, it was released a few years after Kingdom Hearts 2. This also means that we would never really find out more about Roxas other than the stuff we see in the prologue and a little bit towards the end of the game, so we would also never know about his time in Organization 13 or really who he was before being placed in the digital Twilight Town. We would know that he had some sort of involvement with Organization 13 in the past from various flashbacks, and we would also know that during that time him and Axel were really close friends, but we would never know why Roxas left Organization 13, let alone what his day-to-day life as not much more than an errand boy looked like prior to the prologue of Kingdom Hearts 2. Speaking of Axel, we would never really get to see his more laid-back and friendly side, as in Chain of Memories he was a pretty ruthless dude, and while there would be little hints of his personality that we see in 350 over 2 Days throughout KH2 in the prologue and a little bit towards the end, we would never see nearly as much of it as we did in 350 over 2 Days. And as for the Sea Salt trio in general, as for their fate, I said Xion would of course never exist, and like not in a nobody sense, like she would actually never exist, if you know what I mean. And Roxas would just be a part of Sora and would never get his deserved break that he got in Kingdom Hearts 3. Same goes for Naminé and Axel, who of course we know faded away towards the end of KH2 right after he saved Sora, so that would pretty much be the end of his story. And as said, the Birth by Sleep trio would never exist, nor would Ericus or Vanitas, and we wouldn't know literally almost anything about Xehanort aside from the fact that he was at one point Ansem's apprentice, but the whole plot of Xehanort actually being Terranort with amnesia wouldn't ever happen, and also the real Organization 13 that we face in KH3 would never be formed, and the Organization 13, the original one that we faced in KH2, would be the final antagonists that we would ever face. And since none of that would happen, Xemnas would be the main antagonist of the series, and we would never have the whole time travel plot from Dream Drop Distance with young Xehanort, and we would never really know about the Mark of Mastery or what the whole deal with that is. The Key Saga would never happen for reasons I already explained pretty much, and obviously there would never be a Kingdom Hearts 3, let alone Missing Link or KH4. Now let's look at our main characters. I kind of saved them for last because they're the main focus in this one, so yeah. So let's look at what would happen to each of them and what sort of state they would be in this alternate reality. Starting with our main dude Sora, who would return home with his friends, something he wanted to do ever since this whole thing started back in KH1. He also wouldn't be nearly as traumatized as he is in the final battle in KH3, where he is seemingly done with everything and is pretty much ready to give it all up. So all in all, for Sora, this would be a better outcome, unlike for, well, any of the members of the Sea Salt trio, or, well, duo, cause yeah. As for Mr. Edgy Douchebag in Recovery Riku, I think for him, the ending wouldn't be as good as it would be for Sora and Kairi, let's say, but we'll get to Kairi a little bit later, that while it seems like he mostly managed to leave the past in the past, we know later on that it still kinda lingers in the back of his head from time to time. And also, if you're enjoying this video right now, leave a like on the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel as it helps me out a ton, and also feel free to check out my memberships if that's something you're interested in. And also, one final thing, share this video with your friends or anyone who you think might find it interesting. I think that by KH3 is really the point where he actually manages to leave the past in the past, so KH2 as the ending I feel like would leave some sort of unresolved little things for Riku's character, but it's not really a big deal. And as for Kairi, well, she would pretty much dodge a fucking tactical nuke because, well, she wouldn't die. and unlike Riku, she would be more at peace knowing that her friends are back for good, and Donald, Mickey, and Goofy would all return to Disney Castle, and they would be able to continue their lives in peace. That's it for the characters, but what about the franchise as a whole, and for us as fans? How would this affect all of us? I believe that it, or well, the Kingdom Hearts brand as we know it, wouldn't really be nearly as big as it is today, because I feel like KH3 really pushed the franchise forward and was more of a game for the masses, basically allowing more people to be introduced to the series, meaning that not only would the franchise be a lot smaller, but the whole thing would likely die out afterwards because KH2 would be the ending, and the whole series would likely just be known as this little mini-series that Square Enix made in collaboration with Disney with different Final Fantasy and Disney characters. In my opinion, there's really no way that it would be as big as it is today. Briefly going back to the characters and narrative side of things, if you sum up everything, how would that all look like? Well, the Seesaw Trio would definitely get the short end of the stick, as one of them would never exist, and the other two would be, well, pretty much dead. You could argue that the Birth by Sleep Trio would be in a worse situation because, well, they wouldn't ever exist in any way, shape, or form, but that's up for debate. Finally, how would this work as an ending? While I am very glad that it didn't end here, looking at it strictly from an ending perspective sorta, it would be a good conclusion to everyone's story. Maybe there would be some unresolved little things about Riku, like I said, but that is pretty minor and it wouldn't really be a big deal. Maybe that's just because I know what happens after KH2 and that's why I think that way, but I honestly have no idea. But my final thought for this video is that as an ending, Kingdom Hearts 2 would have worked, but I'm glad that it's not the case, of course. And with that said, I want to thank you for watching this video. Until next video stream, bye bye.